Hello and good morning, everybody. How are we doing? This is Jeremiah, and you are in for a treat. I've always really enjoyed details. If you've heard the story, when I started in my dad's office about age 14, could have even been age 13, but I think it was age 14. And my primary first thing I did was I worked on the detail sheets, and he would give me a list of details, and he kept them all in a filing cabinet. They're transparencies, and I'd take the or actually it was a piece of paper, and I'd take the piece of paper, I'd photocopy it onto a transparency, then I'd take those transparencies and tape them onto a mylar sheet, and then run the blueprints of that sheet. And that was kind of the first thing I did that summer when I was 14. And what's funny is, that 10 years later, as he and I are designing the detail system for Land Effects, we modeled it after that simple system. You have a filing cabinet of your details. They're organized. Which details do I want for this project? I grab them from the filing cabinet and I assemble them. And now they're in this project. And we just kept that real kind of simple paper-esque system for it. And I hope you appreciate that. That's all that, as opposed to, of course, as we found, a lot of people go, oh, we just cut a viewport for all these different details and draw them right there in model space. And what happens is you lose them. You draw a really great detail, and a year later, you're like, oh man, where is that detail? Because it didn't get filed. And so it's the real fundamental thing for details. And anyway, we're going to be showing you details for beginners. And so I hope that kind of sounds interesting and fun. The Just a super quick housekeeping thing. This is being recorded, so it'll be available on the website later today. And right now, though, you are watching it live with us, so there is a Q&A button at the bottom. I'm sure you'll have questions. I'd recommend clicking that Q&A button right now, get that window situated, because what's great is you're going to be able to see the answers that we type to other people's questions. So it makes a great companion while you're watching this. We have a really great cross section of users here. I see a pretty full house. This is fantastic. Just a great example of this discipline. We've got a lot of sole practitioners. We got a lot of people from mid-size and even large offices. I see people from like 10 and 20 station firms. So really, this is, really hitting to the powers of this detail system, that it can work for that whole range from a sole practitioner up to the largest office in the world even. So, I'm going to stop yammering because I'm sure Paul is itching to go. Everyone give Paul a big old round of applause. His first webinar of the year. He's ready to rock and roll. So take it away, Paul.
All right, thank you, Jared. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's Land Effects webinar. My name is Paul, and I'll be your presenter today. And what are we looking at today? Today, we will be taking a look at the basics of the Land Effects detail system. This is a beginner's course and meant for those of you that are considering using our detail system, but have yet to really dive into it. Or maybe you've taken a look at it, but you feel overwhelmed by all the buttons and how the system works. So here's the outline for the day. First, we're going to give a little overview of the Land Effects detail system. Then we'll go through the basic Land Effects detail tools in the slideshow. And afterwards, we will jump into CAD, and I'll run through the Detail Explorer, adding details to a project, some basic sheet setup, then placing details, and some detail creation tools, and finally saving details into a library. So what is the real benefit of using the Land Effects detail system? And from what I can see, the biggest benefit is that you get to, or that you can create details, save details, organize and edit the detail library, and of course, place details all from within CAD. So you don't have to be organizing your files and folders in Windows. All of that is viewable from within CAD, and it allows you to keep very clear and precise organization for your detail library. And if you want to start using our detail tools, you want to first head over to the FX Details ribbon. This is where all of our detail tools can be found. So let's take a look at some of these tools. I'm going to be skipping some of them as either they're more intermediate or just not really needed for this beginner's presentation. But first and foremost, I wanted to show off the Detail Explorer. This is your detail library. The button is on the left-hand side of the FX Details ribbon. And within the Detail Explorer, you can browse for details in the detail library, so you don't have to manage the files in Windows. And the details are organized into folders. So on the left there, you see you've got your structure of folders set up. You can create, edit, and delete detail folders in the Detail Explorer. You can also move, copy, and delete detail files from within the Detail Explorer. The detail files are located on the lower right-hand corner there. And you can even right-click on a detail file and open it for edits. So you don't have to go and find that file through Windows. And then the upper right-hand corner there, you see a preview slide of the detail. When you save a detail into the library, LandFX shoots a slide of that and presents it here so that you can get a better understanding of what detail you're looking at. To the left of the Detail Explorer, you can find the Detail Manager button. And this box holds the details that you're using in this project. It's sort of your palette of details that pertain specifically to this project that you have open. And in the Detail Manager, you can add details to the project from the Detail Manager. You can place details on a sheet from the Detail Manager by selecting it and clicking Place, or double-clicking on the detail. It also allows you to keep track of placed and unplaced details. And if you select the detail and you click Edit, it'll open up that detail file so that you can make your edits there. Moving along in the ribbon, we've got our Templates button. The detail template, sometimes referred to as a title block, must be placed around the detail line work before it can be saved into the library. When you click on that templates button, it'll open up this dialog box that you see here. The detail size area, which is all those little white squares, is representative of a sheet of paper. And the 1A size is the default size for detail. For us, it's roughly 7 by 7 inches. But if you want to choose like a double wide detail, you want to choose that 2A option, or double tall, choose the 1B option. So you choose the size of the detail as it relates to a sheet of paper on the in the detail size area there. Then on the right, you have your detail scale, where you can choose what scale your detail will take on. And you can choose between imperial and metric units. And then you want to choose your appropriate units down below that. And you can add width extensions of 25%, 33%, and 50% to detail if needed. So here's what the detail template looks like once you choose that scale and size. And the detail template consists of a detail title and number, a scale, a detail file path, so that will show basically the name of the detail, but it'll show what folder it's saved in, or what series of folders, and also the detail number. And then there's a boundary line around that, which is set to non-plot, so it won't actually print. And just to keep everything confined in your detail within that border is why that's there. So the detail template determines the scale of the detail, as well as the size of annotations and hatches. So you're going to want to place that detail template around any line work that you have before you annotate or place hatches or anything that is automatically scaled. In this example, I have two detail templates set up. One is at 3/4 of an inch equals a foot scale, and one is at 1/2 inch equals a foot scale. And they are right next to each other in model space. And as you can see, the hatch scale and the scale of the M-liter object is different. However, if I were to place these on the sheet, both of the boundaries of the detail would be the same size. And so the scale would adjust so that both of those annotation objects and hatch objects will have a consistent scale. Moving along the ribbon, we have the Save Detail button here. And once you place that detail template around some CAD objects, you can click Save Detail, and it will save whatever CAD objects are in that boundary as a block into your detail library. When you save a detail, the system creates a single drawn file or block of the detail and saves it into that detail folder. By default, the LandFX folder is located, or the detail folder rather, is located in the LandFX folder. And as you can see here, we have the folders P for projects, any letter or numbers within the parentheses next to the name of the folder here is what the actual folder in Windows is named. So for this file here, we have located in the projects folder, or P, in residential, or RE. HOL stands for homes, which is the client name. And then the project itself is expansion, or EXPA. And these two files are the same, but you won't really need to go into the Windows side. And edit detail is just under the Save Detail button. Once details are placed onto a sheet, you can use this button to open up a detail file by simply clicking on it, and it'll open up the source file so that you can make changes to the detail. And after you've made some changes to the detail file, you can save it and then go back to your sheet file and click that Update Details button, and it'll refresh or update the definition of that detail on your sheet. Moving along, we've got some detail builder tools here. So the hatch button opens up the LandFX hatch library, allowing you to select a hatch style and place it into your detail. And again, this needs to be done after the detail template is placed so that it can scale appropriately. Next to hatch, we have the graphics dropdown, which contains buttons for different block libraries that you can use. All of these are default blocks, but you can also add your own blocks to these libraries. But we've got detail graphics, which includes various construction equipment or materials that you might use in a detail, like bolts, various fasteners, masonry, metal framing, etc. And then we've got our plan graphics, and our elevation graphics, and then discipline graphics, which houses things like the scale bar and the north arrow and different types of callouts, title blocks, etc. We also have the bubble callouts, which is an annotation type. What this allows you to do is create an itemized list of different callouts within this little dialog box. And you place an M leader with a block that shows the number of the note, and then you can place a little schedule or key somewhere within the detail to see what those numbers represent. In the Annotate dropdown, we have a few tools here. The detail leader with text is simply the M leader tool, but it pulls the style from your LandFX preferences. And that's what's shown here down below is just an M leader or detail leader with text. The detail leader will place a simple leader with no text. And we also have detail text and M text. The M text is multi-line text, as shown here, and allows you to type in within a box with multiple lines. And then the detail text is just that basic text tool that pulls the style from your LandFX preferences, the detailed text style. And then, of course, we have our dimensioning tools here, various dimension styles that you might want to use in your detail. The ones that you see here are the linear dimensions. And then moving along, we have callout tools. So the basic detail callout tool allows you to call out a place detail, either in a plan, or you can place these in other details that maybe cross-reference each other. And the callout consists of the detail title there, and the detail number as it's placed on a sheet, and the sheet number that it resides on. Next to the callout button, we have the placeholder and the associate detail callout buttons. The placeholder is just that. It places a dummy callout with no number or page number specified. You can add in a title if you wish, and you can just place that if you're not really sure where the detail is going to be yet, but you want to call it out at some point. And then once you have a detail ready for that detail callout, you can use that associate button and click on that callout, and then it'll pull up in a list of details in your project, and you can choose that, and it'll turn it into a regular detail callout. So enough of the slideshow. Let's take a look at using some of these tools in CAD. All right, so here we are in FXCAD 2023. Let's take a look at some of these detail tools. So we're going to want to go to FX details, since that's where they all live. And let's just follow that slideshow a little bit here. Let's look at the Detail Explorer. So if you're just starting with Line FX details, you will likely have the FX detail library. And I think the projects folder is also included. You probably won't have office details, since that's something that I created, but you'll at least have these two. And within the FX detail library are hundreds of various standard details that we've collected over the years. So feel free to go through these and take a look at what details are available, and you're welcome to use these however you see fit. But what I wanted to show was the folder system. So this is the overall category or folder. And under this, we have a subcategory or a subfolder. And they can go this many deep, I believe. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 levels, or 4 levels under the main category deep. So that's how you can organize that. Once you find a folder or a category that has details in it, the details will show up here on the right. And if you select the detail, it should give you the preview image up here and some information about it. So what I've done is I've created a folder for office details. And the way that I did that is to create a main category or a main folder. You need to first select details up here, because you want to select the next level up from whatever you're creating. So I want to select details and click new. Call it webinar. Where'd my mouse go? There it is. And a code, and click OK. Nope. The reason my mouse is acting odd. Let's try that again. Well, of course, this might happen during the actual presentation, but not while I practiced it.
Yeah, I can't even think of the last time we had to just, it looks like force quit AutoCAD during a webinar, right?
Yeah,
Obviously it can happen. We'll just, yeah.
funny. All right, let's try that again. Dead air. All right. Yes, I know. AutoCAD is upset that I quit. All right, so we were in the Explorer. And I was just showing how you can create a new category. Basically, you want to select the category above. And if you're creating a main category, select details first. Give it a name. Okay, and it'll create that folder under whatever folder is selected. So there's that. So there's where your details are. Once you save your details in the library, they will also show up here. Now let's look at how we can add details to a project. So you might already have a project created that you want to add details to. That's great. You can work off that project, but if you don't, you want to create a new project. And to do so, head over to the FX Admin tab and click on Projects List. Okay. And let's create a new project. Let's just call it that. And I had a name. Okay, so in here, you already have the option of creating a detail folder. So this is another way that you can create that folder that's going to house the details for this project. You could do that in your Detail Explorer, or you can do it here, or you can do it in your project manager. So there's 3 spots that I can see where you can do that right here. So once you create a new project, this dialog will open up. If you've already gone past this point, you can go to your project manager button up here. And it'll give you some project information, place for your detail folder, and also the sheet index, which we'll go into a little bit later. So detail folder, I basically want to create a folder that's going to separate this project's details from my other details. So ideally what I'll want is, my detail library that are full of standard details. I will have those. And then for this project, I'll have a separate folder and copies of whatever details I'm going to be using so that if I make any changes to those details that are project specific, I'm not affecting the standard source file. So let's create a new project. So one of the ways that we recommend organizing your details is under projects, have a category for what kind of project it is. Right now, I just have simply commercial and residential set up, but break those down into the types of projects that these will fall into. And then under that, type in the client's name or a code for the client. That way, if you have the same client for multiple projects, you can still work with the system. And then under that client, specify the project. And you could either do the number or the name. I'm going to do the name of the project. I'll make the code the number of the project. Okay, and then I'll select that and click OK. And that detail folder path should show up here. And so any details that I now save into this detail folder are for this project only. So how do you add details to a project? you want to head over to your FX Details tab and open up the Detail Manager right here. So one of the ways that you can add details to a project is to open up the Detail Manager and click the New button, which will open up that Detail Explorer again. And I can just go filter through the details. You can use the search function if you wish and find some details I want to add. So if I want to see what that looks like, click the preview button. And it's recommended that you keep the copy to detail folder checked. That way, it actually makes a physical copy of the file and places it within that folder. So let's add this detail. I'll get a little confirmation that the detail has been added once I click Add to Project. Let's add this one too. And how about this one? So I added 3 details into my Detail Manager, and those have been copied from my standards detail library into this project-specific detail folder. And real quick, let's set up a sheet and place these, and then I'll pause for some questions. So you're going to want to place these on a sheet. Let's just quickly set this up. So I just opened the AutoCAD defaults drawing template. So the page is set up to 8.5 by 11. I'm just going to modify this layout and change the sheet size to 24 by 36. And close that. So now my piece of paper is the right size that I want to be using. And I also just want to quickly place a title block. And I'm just going to use the default version that's available in LineFX in the discipline graphics under user defined. And just place that in there. And I'm ready to go. I can place details on the sheet. One way to do that is to double click on the detail or select it and click place. Now, what I've done is I've set up a layout in CAD. So my sheet looks like it's there, but according to the project, there's no connection to that sheet. So one important step to this is to actually tell your project that there is a sheet here and it should be recognized. So what this dialog box is allowing you to do that. So you want to create a sheet number. I'm just going to do that in a sheet title. You name this however you see fit. And if you choose rename layout, it'll rename the layout name here with the sheet number. Click OK. And next, it wants to know what number this detail is. It'll start at 1 and go from there as you place them, but you can change this if you wish. Click OK. And you'll get a little green preview box of where the detail is going to be placed. So you can just place it on your sheet, as easy as that. And take a look that the detail has gone from up here in the unplaced section to placed details. It shows the sheet number and also the detail number that's on that sheet. I'm just going to delete that, refresh my list so that it's not placed anymore. We have a template that can make placing details a little easier. Under this templates dropdown, there's a button for sheet template. And what you do with this is you click the upper left-hand corner of the window and drag your mouse out. And as you drag it out, it'll create these little cells for placing your details in. And basically the detail, when you go to place, will snap to that corner of the cell. That way, when you're placing all your details, they should line up real nice. Like so. So before we move on, I just wanted to show what happened when we created that sheet in your project manager in the FX admin tab. We have a section called sheet index. And so this is the different sheets that the project recognizes. So we set up a sheet right here. And since the drawing is open, it doesn't show the DWG file, but it shows the layout. And so if you wanted to create your sheets in a different manner, you can do that here by clicking the new button. And just like that previous dialog box, you give it a sheet number. So we've created the sheet, but it's not yet tied to the layout. So to assign it to a layout, you want to use the assign button and choose that sheet. So now I have two sheets set up. And even though we added our details to the detail manager through the detail manager using the new button, you can also copy details into this project folder through the Detail Explorer. So back at that Detail Explorer, you should see that we've got our project specific detail folder now made. And these are the details that are in it. But if I wanted to, say, add some more details in from the Detail Explorer, it's kind of your preference which way you go. I can go through my detail list here. And when I find a detail that I want, simply click and then hold down the mouse button, the left click button, and then drag it over to that folder and then release, and it'll copy the detail over. So now I've added a new detail to that project. If you are not using the LandFX detail library details and you've created your own, you'll get a message asking if you want to move or copy the detail. So if you choose move, it'll move that one file over. But if you want to copy it, which is what I would recommend for this situation, you choose copy for that. Now I've added that detail to the project, but it's not showing up my detail manager because it was left open. All you got to do is press this refresh button and it'll refresh any changes to the details that you've made while it was open. Now I can place this if I like. Okay, I think this is a good spot to stop for questions before we move on to customizing a detail so that it can be saved into the LandFX library.
Well, pretty much all of these questions have been about customizing. So honestly, I think that'd be great. Just get into. Just note, I have shared the link to a couple people for the customizing details section of our documentation. Goes through everything: how to customize the detail template and the dimension style and all those sorts of things. So absolutely, everything is completely customizable.
Yes, it is. But that would be a good topic for a more advanced webinar, I think. When I say customizing, I mean just simply converting an existing detail so that it can be saved into the LandFX library. Certainly, you can customize text styles, div styles, the look of the detail template, size of the details, all that. And we do have extensive documentation on all of that. So let's take a look at a detail that I have here. For all intents and purposes, this was created with CAD objects and not using the assistance of LandFX. That's not entirely true, but I did basically convert all of these into basic CAD objects. This M leader is using the standard text style and standard multi-leader style. And so there's no auto scaling per se going on here. So this is roughly an example of what you might be looking at if you have your own details and you want to convert them to the LineFX library. So probably the first thing you want to do, or at least be aware of, is that if the detail is to be properly scaled, so that when it's printed and you actually measure things out with your scale bar or whatever, you want things to measure up appropriately according to the scale of the detail. And to do this properly, you have to make sure that all of your line work is drawn at 1:1. So no scale involved when you're drawing the detail objects. You want to make sure that you're working within the proper units that you're drawing with. So for this example, I'm working in architectural inches. And I just want to verify that, say, this 6-inch length here is actually 6 inches. One way to do that is to type DI into the command line and press enter for the distance tool. And I'm just going to measure what this should be. And so down here, it says the distance is 6 inches. So I know I'm good there. If it is not drawn at full scale, you'll want to make adjustments to it so that, or scale it up or down so that it does measure up 1:1. Unless, of course, you are planning on not using scale and putting an NTS or not to scale note at the bottom, then that step isn't the most important. So everything's at 1:1. How do I get this into the LineFX detail library? The bare minimum basic thing you have to do is place a detail template around this, and then it can be saved. Since this already has a kind of boundary in title to it, I'm just going to move these objects off to the side over here and just keep them over there for reference, just in case. So I'm left with just my line work. So to place a detailed template, go to your templates dropdown and click the templates button. And here we have that window that I talked about earlier. And let's say that I don't know what the scale is supposed to be. I could click through these, click OK, try to place it, and then go back to the box if I need to make it larger or smaller. But you can also just arbitrarily choose one of those. And before placing it, you have keyboard commands that'll help you size the template appropriately. To take a look at what those keyboard commands are, press the K key before you place it. And it pulls up a little cheat sheet as to the different keyboard commands that you can activate during the placement of the template. So Q and E makes the scale larger and smaller. You can adjust the size with WS, A, and D, and then the width extension with the Z and C keys. So I'm just going to press the E key, and each time I do, it's going to change the scale. And if you look at the command line down there, it says scale 3 inches equals a foot. That's the scale that is currently showing. Keep going till it looks like everything's going to fit in nicely within that detail boundary. And it looks like my scale is going to be 1 inch equals a foot. And then click to place it. Just like that, you can go ahead and click Save Detail, and it will save it into your detail library. However, if you want to have consistent annotation, scale, hatch scale, and so that every detail, no matter what scale it's at, has consistent sizes of these objects, you're going to want to convert these objects as well. And one way to kind of quickly do this without having to replace everything in here is to basically place an example of each object from the LandFX detail annotate and detail builder, or really just the hatch tool, into this window so that it is scaled appropriately for the scale, and then use match properties to carry over those properties onto what's already existing. So let's start with these M leader objects. I'm going to go over to my detail leader with text, which I know places an M leader, and place that right here. Doesn't really matter where, because I'm just going to delete it once I'm done with it. And I'm just going to put that there for reference. Now to apply these properties to these other M leaders so that they respond as if they've been placed using LandFX tools. CAD is really struggling right now. I've lost my mouse. Wait, there it is. Nope. Yeesh. Well,
Are you recording locally?
You think that's it?
Sometimes that really hogs up the machine. You could I would say under the circumstances we can rely on the cloud recording and go ahead and just stop that local recording, see if that helps a little bit.
Yeah, you know what it is, and this is a lesson in proper computer care. I haven't restarted Windows in a while.
Well, there's that too. We could, I could certainly entertain some people with some questions if you wanted to just try restarting real quick, see if that'll help.
Wait a second. Oh no, it looked like it was working. Yeah, of course, ran through this a couple times already, and it was flawless. But yeah, if there's any questions, go ahead and throw them at me. I'll have this back up where we were real quick.
Yeah, and I think just a good one that just came in is just, the overall of what we're doing here. Yeah, these details are created and edited in model space, and
Oh,
then
yes.
they're W blocked out. So each detail is a separate DWG file, and then they are inserted as a block into paper space. So that answers that most recent question here.
Okay, back to where we were. I placed my reference M leader there, placed with the LandFX tool. So it's scaled based on the detailed text size that it uses for consistency. And I just want to apply those properties to my other M leaders. So I'm just going to type MA into the command line, which is short for match properties or match prop, and press enter. Select my source. This is the object that I'm taking the properties from. And then click on the M leaders, and I can window over these. You know what it is? We're on Zoom and I'm getting Zoom calls.
Could be. Maybe we'll see about adding that to our checklist to just kind of get that DND'd or something.
All right. So I've applied those properties to these M leaders. So now if I look at that, it's got the scale that LandFX decides, the multi-leader style, and also the text style of detailed text. So I know that all of my details, leaders with text, callouts will be consistent amongst all my details as long as I'm using these tools. Additionally, let's place an example of a dimension and then use match properties again and click on these place dimensions. just like that, applying those properties to those dimensions. Additionally, it looks like we have a little bit of M text up here. If you don't know what the object is, select the object and open up properties and just verify what it is. So it's M text. So I want to place a little block of M text here. And one note when you're doing this is to make the window for the M text object wide enough or about the same width as what text you're converting, because the match properties will take on that width and change it. Let's say reference here. Use map properties and change that guy. Okay, so we've covered all the annotations. The other thing that does scale automatically are hatches. So how do we place hatches in our detail? Pretty easily with the detail hatch tool here. So I'm just going to place a hatch, and you could either, after selecting and clicking OK, you can either click a closed polyline, or you can press the D key, which allows you to draw the hatch area on the fly. I know this is a closed polyline here, so I'm just going to click on that and add my hatch. And that scales everything appropriately. And it's done. Now, if I have hatches that I want to convert so that they're consistent, I just need to find a similar or like hatch that I can now apply to these ones that exist. So let's do concrete dense. And I'm just going to press the D key and draw a little reference box here. And then once again, just use that match properties command, MA, select that hatch, and apply it to the hatch that's existing. And you can repeat those steps for all of your different hatch patterns. And once you've done that, everything is basically converted over to, what would be done if you used our tools. I guess another thing to think about is also what layers you're using, but you probably have your own standard layers for that. So layer management is going to be more so up to you, but you can save layer states and open layer states through the layers button here. But once your detail is looking good, go ahead and hit that save detail button. Now, because there's only one detail and detail template placed into this model space, it's going to pick that up and open up the Detail Explorer. If you do happen to have multiple details in model space with multiple detail templates placed over them, it'll give you a pick box where you will need to select which detail you are saving. So I've created this detail, and since this is going to be a standard detail, I'm actually going to save it into my Office Details folder, probably in concrete. And oh, I forgot what it was called, but something like 4-foot standing wall. That's why you keep that title block open, or the objects that I moved off to the side, which I didn't do this time because CAD froze. But anyways, that's where you save the detail name. Alternatively, you can just double click this object and change it. And then when you hit save detail, it'll recognize that name and keep it. So I have now saved a new detail into the detail library right here. It's nicely organized and available for use. So that if I go to a new drawing, and let's say I've set up my sheets, though I haven't, you can open up your manager, which is got a project already open. Okay. I can now add that detail that I just saved into this project, like so, and place it. And since this is a new sheet, let's just give it a new name. And this is an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, so it's going to be quite big. But that's how you can place that detail that you just created into onto a sheet. Real quick, I just wanted to show editing and updating in detail. So say you've got your details on a sheet and you notice that some changes need to be made. Instead of going and tracking down that file and opening it and replacing it in CAD, you can do that from your sheet file with the details on it by clicking the Edit Detail button and then selecting a detail, and it'll open up that detail file so that I can go in and make whatever changes are necessary and save it. So you can either hit Save Detail and overwrite it, or you can do just a Control S for a quick save. And then you need to close it because it won't refresh if the file is open. So save it after you made your changes, close it. Notice that the changes have not been applied yet to what's placed on the sheet. For that, you just need to click that Update Details button, and it'll go through and find whichever details have been modified and tell you how many that are on the sheet are taking on new changes. Click OK, and now I've updated the detail with my most recent edits. And finally, just want to show detail callouts. So here's a plan that I have. And let's say it's using that project that we created. I can go to my FX Details tab, click on Callout, and it's going to pull open basically what's in the detail manager for that project. So I have placed details on the sheet. So let's say I want to place or call out a concrete seat wall somewhere in this plan. I click OK after selecting the detail, and then it's going to give me a few different options for call out style. I'm just going to use the basic arrow, and let's say that seating wall is right here. I can click there and place this as you would any other call out, and it's going to come in with a name of the detail number, and the sheet that it lies on. And that's that. If there are any questions, I can take those. We've got a few minutes here.
One that that came up that really might be great to show is just the detail viewport feature. That would be, and also we had another request to just simply show placing another call out. They just want to see that, to do that one more time. So your choice.
Okay, so call out. You just click the call out button. It's going to pull open the different details that you have in this project. If you don't see the preview, it's this button here. Select a detail, click OK. And then since I've already chosen my detail callout style, it's going to remember that and apply that style to the next callout that you place. If for some reason you want to change the callout style, down here it says options. You can press enter or spacebar, and it'll pull up in your different callout types. So let's say I wanted to switch to this one, the detailed cut. Click to place the start point or the arrow and click again to end the end of the section. So this is the section cut detail callout. And then drag your mouse up and click to place where the extension line is going to be. And then once you pick the length of your extension line, click again, and your detail callout will be there. We also have placeholder callouts, which allows you to place a callout that you can just name anything you want. So maybe you don't have the detail prepared yet, or it's not placed on the sheet, but you know that you're going to want to have a cross section of this sidewalk here. So then later, when you do have your details placed on sheets, you can go back, click the associate button, and click on this and assign it an appropriate detail, which I don't have one that's appropriate here, but if I did, I would do that and click on it. And then what was the view import?
Yeah, so not the view import, but the under templates, the
Oh, yes.
install detail viewport there. Yeah, exactly. So actually, have you even worked with this? I mean, it is brand new, so I don't know.
I did, but
I
I
can kind of
didn't
walk you.
for
I'll walk you
this
through it. It's just,
presentation. So
yeah, just go back to model space and I'll kind of walk you through it. It's totally fine. If you want to go back to your plan there, and we'll find a little area, like maybe that little, yeah, a little patio area looks great. Let's just something like that. If you wanted to say put a little detail viewport around that, it's, obviously it's not the, forgive us, it's not the best example of something you would do, but just I want a small area to like that. So you just say insert detail viewport, and
looks
then
like this is what's in the example.
oh, hey, there you go. Might as well do that bridge, exactly. And so when you do detail viewport, it's just going to give you the, going to tell you what's the title. And then, our same little dialog box for picking that detail template. Now this will be automatically scaled. So you just kind of get the scaled up for what you want.
See that one.
There you go. And so if you now go to your detail, you do get exactly go to your layout and pull up the detail manager, you'll see that it is there in the detail manager automatically. You can even click the preview. The preview should have been shot for it as well. And you do need to place it on the same sheet is the only caveat, of course, because that's what we're doing here. And so if you go to place, it's just going to cut that viewport into this layout.
Boop.
Boom. And so, a lot of people, we actually, just to caveat on this, we literally did kind of push against this feature for quite some time. A lot of people said, oh, that's how we do all of our details. We just cut these viewports and edit them right there in the model space in the design file. And it's just, unfortunately, it's just very antithetical to the entire design of the detail system, where your details are stored in this library where it's easy to reference them on a future project. But we understand, yes, there are these times, and I would just leave it at that, that the intention is that it should be done, kind of rarely, because you are risking losing that detail because it's now just in that design file and it's impossible to quickly pull into another project. So, but if it is intimately connected to that design, like this one, it's this exact bridge, there's no sense in having that detail have to be in a separate file. It works best here. So it just is an extra tool in your quiver.
Very cool. There's got to be more questions of that, though.
Oh my gosh. Well, let's see. Let's see. Well, but we are at 11 o'clock. We are at the witching hour. I will just say, I was able to get all these questions answered. I would like to think people are happy with those answers I typed. And feel free to reach out to us for further clarification, further resources. Like I said, I sent the link to our documentation a few times. We also have other webinars just like this on the detail system. All this is there. You're welcome to reach out to us if there's something you can't find. A lot of times we'll just send you one of these webinars that maybe you weren't able to find on your own. That's totally fine. And also your ideas and desires for future webinars on the detail system, because obviously it is a very vast subject and kind of hard to cover in just an hour. But speaking of that, that hour is up. Thank you guys so much. I do hope you liked it. Feel free to, of course, like I said, let us know and all that. And otherwise, have a fantastic weekend.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.